Springpod. We're going to get started in just a moment. We're just going to wait for a few more people to join into the webinar, just so we can make sure that everyone who would like to watch can get there just for the start as well. In the meantime, though, make sure that you follow us on social media at Springpod on Twitter, and let us know that you're watching us as well using the hashtag LearnLounge. We've had some fantastic speakers on, and we've got some more as well, especially one that's on there in a couple of minutes. And let us know that you're watching using that hashtag LearnLounge. You can also catch up on previous webinars that we've done for LearnLounge on our website. They're all available for free on demand, so make sure that you go and give those a watch as well. We've had some fantastic speakers on. For example, this morning we had Samantha on, who was talking about law. So if you're interested in going into law and the paths that you can take to get into that, she was very good for that as well. If you've got any questions as we go through our talk today with Dalton, then make sure that you use the Q&A function on the website now. Put your questions into there. I'll be able to see them, and then I'll be able to ask them to Dalton later on when we have the Q&A session at the end of his presentation today. We're going to be taking donations for the Children's Trust as well, but we'll talk very shortly about that as well. My plan for these webinars is to try and get us to 2,000 followers on Twitter. I think we're on our way. So if you can follow us on Twitter, if you haven't already, then please do, because you'll get fantastic updates from us here at Springpod about the potential webinars and LearnLounge sessions that we've got coming up, and those that you definitely don't want to miss either. So like I said, make sure you follow us on social media. Use the Q&A function that is on the website, and we'll get started with Dalton in just a second once we've got everyone else in who is wanting to be here today, and we just want to make sure that no one misses off the start. So if you did want to catch up on any of the talks that we've already had, then make sure you visit our website, and we can get going on there. All right, I think it's about time that we get going. So hello everyone, and welcome to this afternoon session of LearnLounge. We're Springpod. It's an early careers network helping young people make more informed choices when it comes to their future careers. And LearnLounge is part of that mission for us. Through this, we'll bring some influential speakers with incredible stories right to you. So there's plenty to tune in for and even be inspired by. So for instance, just this morning, like I mentioned earlier, we had Samantha Hope showcasing the world of law and all the different pathways into the legal industry. So if you're thinking of a career in law, make sure you catch it on demand via the LearnLounge website. My name's Joe, and I'll be hosting today's session of LearnLounge. Just a couple of pointers before we start. Each session and today's session will take about 40 minutes. Please do ask questions using the Q&A function available on the website. Join the conversation on social media as well using hashtag LearnLounge, and we'll be raising money for the Children's Trust as well. Please do donate, and we'll talk more about that later on. But this afternoon, we're very lucky to be joined by the Chief Executive of that very charity, the Children's Trust, Dalton Leong, who, after spending 2 decades building a career in the private finance sector, found his new calling as a leader in the charity sector. Now, having worked for some incredible charities, including the Shooting Star Children's Hospice, he now leads the Children's Trust, which is a brilliant organisation that helps to support and rehabilitate children with acquired brain injuries. And we're so proud to be joined by this inspirational leader. So Dalton, welcome to LearnLounge, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Joe, and thank you and all at Springpod for supporting the Children's Trust. It really is appreciated. So check out this haircut to begin with, because it's featured, or not this particular one, but in my presentation, you shall learn more. So this is about me, how I made the move from a career in finance and banking to lead a UK charity that I'm really proud to say. As I said, we all started somewhere. We have to start somewhere. I started in the black and white days, which makes me really old. And here I am with my older brothers and sister. We were named in alphabetical order. So guess what? A, B, C, D. I'm the youngest of 4. And look at that. I was into playing guitar at a very early age. My dad was a butcher. sadly passed away when he was 42, just before my 11th birthday. So didn't get to see me go to Hampton Grammar School, where I started. And check out that haircut, the haircut that you can only really see these days in a kind of lockdown situation that we find ourselves in with the coronavirus pandemic. But I was always into playing guitar right throughout my childhood, and always into these rather strange, messy haircuts. But then the real work began. I joined Barclays Bank. What happened was I got 8 O-levels or GCSEs in new money and 1 A-level. Didn't go to university. I joined the bank, and in those days a lot of people decided to start a career in banking. It was either because they didn't make the grades to go to university, or they just felt it was a career that they could start with. I started with Barclays Bank, and for the first 18 months it was really slow progress, and then something happened. This happened. The Outbound course came along. Never truer words than those, changing people's lives for the better. It transformed my career at an early stage, and it was a piece of luck that landed. Luck is a really important word, and has featured throughout my career. With the Outbound course, so we were in freezing cold lake in middle of January in Ullswater, and you were doing things like rock climbing, abseiling, canoe capsizing, all crazy things, and I can't swim. So how did that help you think? Well, actually, this was all about Barclays recognizing people that they thought could be leaders of the future. So I had the opportunity, 2 weeks, 2 of the best weeks of my life, and I was only a 19-year-old at this point, and that seemed to transform my banking career. So over the next 21 years, as Joe's already said, 2 decades in the bank, I had any number of roles in corporate, retail, high net worth, project management, training roles. And I finished my career at Barclays Wealth, managing a team of Barclays premier banking managers. So in that 21 years, there is no doubt you create and you achieve so many transferable skills that helps you ultimately run a business, whether it's cash flow, budgeting, just running a business effectively and efficiently, and really just fine-tuning every area. And I'm very grateful to Barclays, who created all of my background and the skills that I learned, ultimately to move on to running a charity. Now, when I was in the bank, I became a founding trustee of a charity called the Shooting Star Children's Hospice, as it is today. And how it happened was the founder was running pantomimes, and I said, well, I fancy doing a pantomime. And before you knew it, I was training for the bank at the time. Before you knew it, I was this character, Sergeant Cato in Cinderella of all things. And I did panto year on year with the bank. Anyway, the relevance of that story, and this is all about how the luck really falls into place, is that the founder then established the Shooting Star Children's Hospice. And I had the opportunity to go and be a trustee of Shooting Star, founding trustee back in 1995, 25 years ago. So that's how long I've been in this sector. So for 7 years, I was a trustee of Shooting Star. And for 7 years, I was doing an annual pantomime. Oh, yes, I was. And that then took me onto this new career pathway, joining the Shooting Star Children's Hospice. How did that happen? Well, as I said, 7 years I was a trustee. But actually, we were looking for someone to succeed the founder, who was also our chief executive. And I got this phone call out of the blue. I was working for in the city at Barclays Premier Banking in Fleet Street. And I got this phone call saying, what would it take you to give up your overpaid city banking career? And I was paid handsomely, working very long hours. So I did a SWOT analysis, like every good banker does, worked out actually, was it about wealth, or was it ultimately about happiness and something that I'd find really fulfilling to help push my career? And I chose, and I never use the word sacrifice, I chose to move into the charity sector as an employer, originally as Director of Operations and Marketing. And I had the pleasure of overseeing the build of this hospice you see in front of you. Beautiful hospice, supports children at that time from all over Southwest London, North Surrey, and then eventually we, about 2009, I had negotiations with the chief executive of Chase, which is in Guildford, another children's hospice, and we decided that it was the right thing to do to merge the organizations. Now, one key learn for me in my banking career was about customer service. Always put the customer in. Obviously, in banking terms, that's your shareholders, that's your customer that comes in and withdraws cash or whatever. But of course, in the charity sector, it's, in my case, disabled children and their families. And so the chief exec and myself at Chase said, look, we could support families better if we join. And that's quite a difficult and a brave move to make when you're actually realizing that obviously inevitably some people are made redundant as a result of it, because you don't need 2 chief execs, you don't need 2 directors of finance, etc. But actually, if you keep in central to your thinking what's right for the customer, or in this case, we were spending something like £250,000 on senior executive salaries. Actually, we were now putting that to supporting children rather than paying ourselves. And so the charities are now called Shooting Star Children's Hospices. They have a patron, that's Simon Cowell, who obviously many of you will know. And it's going from strength to strength, I'm really pleased to say. So then what happened? I joined Global. Global, who's Global, you might ask? They own Capital, they own Heart, Classic FM, Smooth, LBC, Gold, and Radio X. I'm sure you know a lot of those radio stations. Global is the owner, or the parent company of all of those radio stations. Initially, I went to join them as their managing director. And how did that come about, you ask? Well, when I was having merged or negotiated the merger of Shooting Star and Chase, I was going along to, and this is, I guess, the next piece of luck in my life, for want of a better word. I had the opportunity to go to a reception at 11 Downing Street, which was run by Global. And at that reception, the director of fundraising, we were having a glass of wine together, and she had this name badge on that said Acting Director of Charities. And I said, oh, when are they going to give you the, your stripes and give you the managing director or the chief exec role? It was a bit too much for her. She said, I'm not ready for that. But because I'd kept the relationship going over the 3 years that Capital's Help a London Child, as it was called at the time, was supporting Shooting Star with a grant 3 years earlier, she knew me quite well. And she knew my character, she knew my leadership ability and so on. And she said, why don't you apply for this job? You'd be perfect. Now, this is, for me, this is all about, I've used the word already, but it is pertinent, how you make positions and opportunities for yourself to have luck. And at the time, I was very fortunate because I was also being headhunted for a role as chief executive of the Battersea Dogs and Cats Home. So there was a bit of competition between which role, would have been more appealing to me. And actually, after 2 months of assessment process at Global, I decided it was a role that I wanted to do. It was different. My daughter thought I was a hero because I was introducing her to Ollie Murs and Jessie J, Summertime Ball and Jingle Bell Ball. So, every dad's hero in that sense. And so I went to Global. I thought this is the job for me. But actually, I realised one of the last things I did before I left Global was talk about one charity, because at the time, all of these radio stations had different charity brands, if you like. There was Classic FM Foundation, there was Have a Heart, and there was Help a Capital Child. And the last thing we talked about was having one brand, if you like, for Global, a bit like BBC's Children in Need. And so that happened shortly after I left. They introduced what's now known as Global's Make Some Noise, and they help a number of small charities right throughout the UK, and it's doing fantastically well. But I was only there for 3 years. Why? Because I was missing what I'd had at Shooting Star, where you meet the beneficiaries, you see the difference on a daily basis that you make to people's lives. I'm not saying they don't do that at Global, of course they do, but they're handing out hundreds of grants to hundreds of different organisations. So I felt that I needed to move on, and I always believe in transparency. I had a very open, honest conversation with my boss at Global, and I said, I'm not going to be here forever. I miss what I had at Shooting Star, all the things I've just said. And by luck, 3 months later, this was in July 2012, in October of that same year, I had the opportunity to move on. And this sort of opportunity came about. In April 2013, I was able to join the Children's Trust, where I'm today chief executive. I've been there 7 years and a number of days now. It's amazing. The Children's Trust, again, it was a 2-month process, but actually what that told me is they were a credible organisation that really wanted to make sure they got the right type of person. And that impressed me that actually it was such a rigid process. So the Children's Trust, here we are in the black and white days. So probably matches the photo you saw earlier of me. The nurses in their pork pie hats, I love that, and the children enjoying the sunshine, excuse me. This was the days when Tadworth Court and the Children's Trust didn't actually exist. This photo shows us when we were actually part of Great Ormond Street Hospital for sick children, and children had respiratory conditions, so they were taken from the relative smog of London and brought into Greenfield, Surrey, for recuperation and fresh air and so on. And here we are in glorious Technicolor. Very proud of this photo. I took this myself. And if you go onto my Twitter feed, you'll see many of a guest standing in this underneath this archway with their manor house in the background. This is actually a Grade 1 listed 17th century mansion house. And it's the centerpiece of a 25-acre site where we support children with brain injury. We're the UK's leading charity for children with brain injury, really proud to say. And there are 40,000 children that acquire a brain injury each and every year. And that can be by accident, it could be a car accident, it could be knocked off their bike, near drowning, and sadly, obviously, in some cases, illnesses. They could have a stroke, they might have meningitis, and so on. There's a whole range of things, but there are so many children that could be supported. And we're based only in Tadworth here in Surrey. Our ambition is we support all children who have brain injury, neurodisability, help them live their best life possible. And we do that through providing 24/7 nursing care, rehabilitation, neuro-rehabilitation with physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech and language therapy, any number, music therapy, play therapy, it rolls on. We also have our own school, the Children's Trust Schools, special education school, which has residential children and also day children. We have a brain injury community service right across the UK. So currently working in partnership with hospitals in Sheffield, Nottingham, Leeds, St George's and Tadworth. We provide short respite break for families when they need support, because obviously it takes its toll. Quite often these families have other siblings of the child that's got the brain injury. And we also provide information services, including online services through our Brain Injury Hub. So the Children's Trust, it's an amazing place. It helps me, I suppose, define what I'm about as a leader every day, and what's actually honed in on what I've found to be success criteria and what's actually worked for me. Things work differently for different people, but what's worked for me in my career, and you'll be able to spell this out for yourself literally when you see this. So first of all, composure. How can you remain calm in all situations, regardless of what's thrown at you? Keeping that composure has been important. How can you be thorough in your approach with everything you do at all times? How can you make sure that you're innovative? Today, more than ever, with this global pandemic crisis, we are having to find ways at the Children's Trust to do new things in an innovative way. The speed with which we brought in digital technology to have meetings via Zoom and via Microsoft Teams and so on. I'm even talking to my friends regularly on House Party. I'm sure that's an app that many of you have grown to love in the last few weeks by default. Transparency. I talked about being open, honest in everything you do, just being transparent around the way you're trying to approach your work and your life. Empathy. There's a lovely quote by somebody called Maya Angelou, and it's people remember the things that you said, people remember the things that you did, but people will forget the things that you said, people forget the things that you did, but people will never forget the way you made them feel. And I think this is all about how do you show empathy to everyone that you interact with. Resilience, of course, in the current climate, this is more true than ever. How do you make sure that you have the tenacity to just keep going and driving forward, regardless of whatever's thrown in front of you? Initiative. You have a choice. You can be reactive. You can react to things every day that are going wrong, or you can choose to be proactive and take control of your lives and your career. I absolutely prefer to take the initiative and be in control of my destiny. Agility. Today, we have to adapt and change more than ever. And that need to be flexible in your approach all the time, for me, has been really, really crucial. And as you can see, you've got a nice way of remembering those, hopefully, and that's free. So that's been important. But the only thing that I've found throughout my whole career, this is the only constant, and that is change. There's never a truer word. I've pretty much throughout my banking career and my charity career, it's always about driving change and being willing to change at the same time. Yes, it's hard, it's messy, but believe me, it is gorgeous at the end. So the other thing that's important is really just making sure you work hard and play hard. It's very easy to just think, as I did in my banking days, work 60, 70 hours a week. It doesn't do anyone any favors. You have to get that work-life balance right. Make sure you have plenty of time to enjoy yourself. And I certainly do that. There's me performing in Crazy Few in my Amdram days when I moved on from pantomimes to serious productions. And here I am as a shark in West Side Story. And of course, I did get to play guitar in the end, here as the lead role of Edwin in Epsom Players' Summer Holiday. So it was going to happen. And by the way, I am playing live guitar in that photo. But this phrase here, your attitude determines your altitude. I've seen it somewhere on a motivational board somewhere. And for me, that is everything. I love the mnemonic ASK, A-S-K, where attitude is A, S is skills, and K is knowledge. You can have all the skills and knowledge you like, but if you haven't got the right attitude, it won't get you anywhere. You have a fantastically positive attitude, believe me, you can teach those skills and knowledge. So this, not only do I love this phrase, but actually it's true quite literally. So here we are with some friends. I went and got to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, to Gilman's Point, which, as you can see, is on the top of the crater rim, but not quite the summit, which is where I was headed for. That was an amazing feeling, and it was about also raising money. I was very proud to raise £25,000. The team of Team Shooting Star, as we were called at the time, we raised £50,000, which obviously went to directly support the children with life-limiting conditions at Shooting Star Children's Hospice. And then the following year, together with two of my closest friends, I did the London Marathon. I thought I'd challenge myself, and I'm not a runner. If you saw me in my school days, I absolutely was not a runner, but managed to raise £7,500 and ran the marathon without stopping, which was my aim, and in under 5 hours. So I was very proud of that. But then I carried on, and just 4 years ago, went to this place. I don't know if some of you may recognize this, some beautiful sights on the way. These are all photos taken with an iPhone. But this is the world's highest mountain, Everest. And I trekked to Everest Base Camp with some others, and we reached base camp, and we raised £40,000 as a team. So, you know, working hard, playing hard. Yes, these things drive you to better things. And of course, the lovely thing about this is that we then also managed to buy a minibus for the Children's Trust. And that minibus currently saves the Children's Trust each and every year £30,000, because it's used for taking young people and children to their hospital appointments in the acute London hospitals, or for day trips to the seaside or something. So each year, if we'd had to hire a vehicle or a private ambulance, we'd have to, so not only the 40,000, but we also save £30,000 each year that you're on that. So it's very, very, very satisfying. But the point I'm making around this is you can build this into your lives if you make sure you work hard and play hard throughout your career. So if all else fails, of course, there is also the opportunity to take on this role, but maybe not, who knows. So what I would like to, just before I finish, I would just like to show you a short video, because as I said earlier on, customer service is really important. And in the case of the Children's Trust, that is our beneficiaries, the children we support. And whenever I watch this very short video film, I'm always inspired, and it just keeps me motivated for the next challenge of raising £7 million each and every year on top of the state funding we get. So please enjoy this for 2 minutes.
Wow, Dalton, that I'm actually quite lost for words, to be honest, and that doesn't happen very often.
Could I just say a few more things just before I close, Joe?
Yeah,
but no, thank you. And actually, I've seen that 30 times myself, and every time I watch it, it wells me up. So but it keeps me motivated, as I said. I just really wanted to finish, if I may, just with, I guess, this phrase. For me, it's about, a career where you can make the luck in the life you wish to lead. You can do that by the actions that you take proactively, being absolutely driven. And, my father passing away at a very early age, he has always been, together with my mother, who's now 88, has been my inspiration, because both of them had such a hard work ethic and driving you. The first piece of luck happened with the out of bound course, but the rest of the time you can make that luck yourself. So I'm a great believer in these words. So thank you so much for listening.
Dalton, thank you so much. Honestly, it's such an inspiring story, and the work that you've done, I think, is totally fair to say that it's beyond exceptional. So, and that video as well from the Children's Trust it's quite something. I think when it's all well and good, talking about the work that charities do, but there's nothing that hits harder than seeing exactly where that money goes. I think quite a lot of people need to actually see it for themselves, and the work that does. And let's go on now to take some questions from the guys watching at home. First question up from guest 711 was, what was the best and worst part of working in finance for you?
I think the best part was always about just making sure, as I said, customer service has been something that has been central to everything. The bank spent a lot of money, invested a lot of money in my training over the years. So you did meet some amazing people around, and you learned from others. I'm a great believer in learning from good practice of good leaders, and also learning from those you don't admire and making sure you don't make those same mistakes. So absolutely, that's I think for me, probably the worst part was knowing that I was working 60, 70 hours a week, actually, by the time I left banking. I was in the city when I left. And knowing that actually it didn't feel like the beneficiaries obviously were the shareholders. And, I wasn't a huge shareholder myself. And therefore you couldn't see the purpose necessarily in the same way that I do today in my charity career. So I'm really driven by purpose and the community spirit.
Guest 891 has asked, you've got quite a few different skills that you've picked up through the various roles that you've had. Which one do you think has best helped when it comes to leading a charity?
I think it's about people, actually. Every individual is important in my mind. So when I'm at the Children's Trust, we have 560 staff, 1,400 volunteers, and every single one of those people is part of the Children's Trust family. It doesn't matter whether they're whatever volunteering role they do or how senior they are. As far as I'm concerned, you treat every single one on an equal basis and as an individual. So for me, it's about people and relationship management.
I suppose as well, all the jobs that you've had, have been about building those relationships but just with different outcomes, so you're building relationships, but for different reasons. So I suppose for people who are watching at home, those skills themselves don't change. They're very much transferable to other environments, would you say? Very
much so, yeah. There is no question that without my banking experience and background and training, I wouldn't have been able to go on to lead a UK charity such as the Children's Trust. So yeah, there's no doubt you have to make sure you take the best bits with you as you develop your career and enjoy yourself. I genuinely have enjoyed my work life. I sometimes don't believe I'm the age I am, and I should still have that pudding bowl haircut you saw when I was 11, or maybe not. So
what do you think that then employers are perhaps looking for something for someone who wants to go into the charity industry, whether it be, you know, of any level? Because I know if they're looking for things that are higher level, they'll want, you know, like strong managerial skills, but for anything, there must be like one sort of skill that you've got to have if you want to work for a charity.
I think what's helped me is the fact that I had a financial career. So I understand numbers, it's really important. So I always say, whenever, you know, all three charities that I've had the pleasure of leading, always said I never apologize for running it as a business. Yeah. So we are a business, we're just not for profit. And that is really important. So that's understanding the numbers. How do you make sure, you know, so today my focus is on how can we drive down our fundraising costs, and our year on year we've been cutting costs in the last 3 years by about 5%. That's really important, because if we can cut down and increase the net income, then of course that means we can support more children with brain injury. It's, you know, it's the same in any business. You have to try and make it as lean and as efficient as possible. So for me, that's really, really important. And I've taken that throughout all of my different roles over the years.
Did you naturally find yourself being a strong leader, or was it something that you discovered as you were going through your financial career that you thought, actually, I think this is where I belong, you know, at the top of the table?
Definitely not the latter. I don't think I was born a confident person. And in some cases, I'm not confident, actually. I think it was when things happen to you. So, you know, I described in my journey, my first piece of luck was the Outward Bound course. So for somebody to have recognized, and by the way, when I talk about luck, the reason that was lucky is because I wasn't due to go on the Outward Bound course. Somebody pulled out, and I was a reserve. So it was quite a nice moment in my life, bearing in mind I was 19 years old, been in the bank for 18 months or so. Somebody somewhere was saying, this guy could be ready for leadership development. Let's chuck him in Lake Ullswater and see if he can capsize a canoe and live. And thankfully I did. So, you know, for me, this was about actually somebody therefore recognizing that you've got skills. You still have to demonstrate it when you come back. But actually what happened is that I naturally wanted to try and take charge of things and organize people to make sure we could do some of the activities on that Outward Bound course, and it got spotted. And this is the point I make, though, but the starting point was luck.
And why are you so passionate about what you do? What is it for you that gets you up in the morning to get to work? Great
question, Joe. You saw the video, and actually, you know, every time I watch that video, and we've got several, the children, the young people we support at the Children's Trust, they are the people that drive and motivate me every single day. Because if you think about it, on many occasions, they were like probably most people listening and watching this right now, and they've had, you know, inverted commas, normal lives, and then sadly they're hit by a car, or they're knocked off their bike, and their lives are never the same again. So that in itself helps drive the way I operate my life. But it's why I also say about the work hard, play hard, because if you do that, you just don't know. You just don't know what's around the corner. Losing my dad, you know, when I was not even 11 years old, and he was only 42, that's no age at all to go. So it just helps set the way you choose to live your life. And that's what I've done throughout my career.
Guest 357 has asked, what are the do's and don'ts for a person like you who has spent 35 years in the city, who wants to establish a new career in the charity sector? They said that they've started by studying for a qualification in charity accounting. Would you say that's a good place to start?
Yeah, I'd say it's a very good start. It's 21 years in the city in banking. I'm not that old, and then the rest in the charity sector. Just I know there's getting a bit grey here, people, but yeah. So no, I think that's a fantastic opportunity. Actually, charity accounting, very good, because it mixes the finances, it mixes the business skills. I would also say try and get to do some volunteering. So as I say, I was a volunteer trustee, founding trustee for Shooting Star for 7 years. You learn a lot in that time. So the reason the founder and the chief executive of Shooting Star approached me, you know, her words, you know, in the 7 years you've been a trustee, you know probably 80% of what I know about children's hospices, plus you've got all the financial banking skills. Why don't you come and, you know, apply to be my successor? That's exactly how the conversation went. So yeah, absolutely, charity accounting, great idea. Volunteer, you know, volunteer for a charity, become a trustee. All of those things will help if you really are driven to move into the charity sector.
Being where you are now, CEO of a leading UK charity, looking back on when you first started with Shooting Star, are there any tips or any piece of advice that you'd give to yourself back then that you now know?
That's a great question. Possibly not, because I'm one of these people that sort of loves and has loved learning on the job as I go along. So as I've said, you know, there's certain leaders that I really admire, you know, Nelson Mandela, and look at the life and the life he made for himself. And you learn from others. So you take the best bits of all the people you admire and think, I'm going to do that. I really like the way he or she did that. And I don't like that. You know, I don't like the way he or she did that. I'll make sure I don't. So for me, it's about a learning process. I'm a great believer that every day you learn. So you know, just last year, I took a qualification, a chartered manager qualification, and that took 18 months to get. People go, at your age, why do you still want to do, you know, qualifications? You don't need to. Yes, I don't need to, but it helps push and develop, and you never stop learning as a leader. And that's why I did it. And I'm very proud. Yes, I'm glad I've got it out of the way, by the way, because I am getting on a bit. But actually, it was great to get that qualification. A really, really pleasurable experience.
Guest 545 wants to know, how many hours a week are you working?
Well, much better than when I was in banking. Great question. In banking, I was doing 60 to 70 hours a week, very well paid. City banking, huge bonuses. So the last bonus I got when I left banking was 56% of my salary. That's just absurd. And of course, in the charity sector, you don't get bonuses. You don't get any of the trappings you do get in the private sector and in banking. But it's not about that. Part of the reason I made the move also was about work-life balance. And so now I would guess I do about 50 hours during the week rather than 60 or 70. The however to that, and I think, you know, I'm sure this resonates with everyone watching and listening right now, is we all have phones, and inevitably, you know, I'm looking at phone, checking an email. Beyond that, it's very difficult because I don't see it as long hours when it feels almost like a vocation, and when you love what you do. So, it possibly is more than that. But I would, you know, broadly say about 50 hours a week. So not excessive, bearing in mind, you know, I'm a chief exec of a £25 million charity.
Yeah, I must say it's probably quite difficult, you know, to call it work when the results, you know, are so fulfilling. And if you really love what you do, I mean, that's the phrase, isn't it? It's not work if you love what you do. So, yeah. And someone else has asked as well, what's your favourite memory from the Children's Trust? You must have, you know, quite a few.
I'm very fortunate. These are great questions. I'm very fortunate because, you know, I get to meet all these celebrities. Last night we announced, you know, Harry Judd and Izzy Judd as our latest ambassadors. And if you go on his Insta page, by the way, he's offering 10 people a free drumming session, because he's a McFly drummer, for those of you that don't know. And if you donate to the Children's Trust, he's saying, I'm going to pick 10 people at random and either have a Zoom chat with you or a drumming session. So I get to meet, you know, and that's lovely. But it is part of, it's always a means to an end. You know, David Walliams is our ambassador. You know, he's having a Zoom chat with our children, which I'll be joining straight after this. You know, and wow, these are just wow moments, you know, but actually it still all goes back to, it's because it's wow moments for the children. Yeah, it's not about me having those wow moments. Yes, I'm lucky because I get to enjoy those occasions. I
suppose they're kind of your bonuses in a way, aren't they?
Yeah, I think there's perks of the role, I think, is what
yeah. And I think McFly was definitely my era, but I suppose if you've got like 16, 17-year-olds watching, then may or may not be for you. But talking of patrons as well, like you mentioned, you've got David Walliams, Richard Hammond as well, as we know from Top Gear and the Grand Tour, Elaine Page, MBE, and Phil Tufnell as well. You know, they're big names.
Yeah, and they're great people. We are very, very fortunate to be supported by some amazing celebrity ambassadors. Yeah, they're big names, but they see what everyone here has just watched, that video. They've all been to visit us at the Children's Trust in Tadworth. And the thing is, we don't choose our ambassadors because they're big names. We choose people that happen to be big names, but are passionate about our work. And that is important.
Guest 287 has said, when you're a child, did you ever imagine you would work for a charity? And then in brackets, they've put, I'm very proud of your mentality. You said your parents were your role models and you are definitely mine, from your daughter.
Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. That's yeah. Well, there's a photograph of my daughter behind me with my mother. I just noticed in the screen there. So yeah, no. Well, I wish you hadn't said that last bit. I was loving it already up until then, but even more so now. Fabulous. No, but you know, I hope that my daughter will take away what I've taken away from my dad, which is a hard-working ethic. And focus, actually, resilience, focus, and just, you know, keep driving ahead and enjoy yourself. She said, you know, I showed photos of me playing guitar. My daughter's already a better guitarist than I am, so she's going to go far.
Guest 956 has asked, what are your recommendations, for someone who doesn't have much job experience yet, as a new graduate, but is wanting to make a successful career in the charity sector? What advice would you give to them?
So sorry, starting out, what stage are they at the moment? Sorry,
a graduate. They're
a graduate. If it is a real passion for you, so there is, if you're just about to graduate, I'm an ambassador for an organisation called Charity Works, which is a not-for-profit sector graduate scheme. Have a look at that, Charity Works. I think it's charityworks.co.uk, but it'll be obvious, Charity Works, one word. And they put young first-time or people that have just graduated into their first charity role for 1 year. And they give them a lot of background training. So currently I'm acting as a mentor to someone who's a Charity Works graduate. So I would strongly recommend anyone that is driven to working in this sector, the charity sector, have a look at that as one option. I mentioned earlier on another opportunity, which is find a way to volunteer with a cause that resonates with you. The one thing I would say in my charity career, you can probably tell there's always, it's always children, disabled children. That's my preference, because there are so many different brilliant causes in the charity sector. So you've got to choose your calling, if you like, and be passionate about the cause. I could never work. And there was a great question from someone earlier on about comparing banking. What was the calling versus charity? I think part of it is, one thing that I don't miss about banking is it wasn't in the heart. Yeah, I was doing it and I was doing it to the best of my ability. With the charity, it's in the heart, and having a community spirit has always been important to me. Knocking on the doors of elderly neighbours in the last few weeks to see if I can do their shopping because they live alone is really important to me, and that's what I've been doing. So it's either that's intrinsic. You can't make that happen if it's not within you.
I suppose as well, you would be doing your best work with a cause that is something that you really feel you can get stuck into, or something that you might find relatable as well, for example. So I mean, some people get into charity work because of personal experiences that they've had, or relatives and that sort of thing. So it just seems like a fantastic cause as well. And guest 995 has asked, working in the charity sector, do you find that sometimes your feelings affect your commercial and leadership decisions, and how do you separate the two, or do you even need to?
Yeah, that is a superb question, and thankfully the short answer is no. And you have to I talked earlier on about being agile and being adaptable, really important. You have to find a way to look beyond some of the really difficult circumstances. So, for example, since I've been chief executive of the Children's Trust, occasionally I do shifts with the nurses and the children's support assistants, therapists on the houses. We have 8 residential houses on that 25-acre site I showed you earlier. And it's really hard. I'm emotionally and mentally drained by the end of that shift with our staff. And what it does for me in my role, it makes me just admire my colleagues so much. They are just the most incredible carers, so passionate about doing the right thing by the children, keeping the child central to everything we're doing. But actually, it's about what are your skills best for. My skills are best for not doing that, because I can't. I dread to think what it must be like to have a child with a severe brain injury, and you're trying to support them 24/7, looking after their personal care needs, etc. Usually they can't walk, talk, eat, or quite often they can't walk, talk, or eat when they come to the Children's Trust. So the best result, of course, we can get them to that place where they can do all those things and the activities of daily living. But for me, it's about compartmentalizing and saying, right, I'm good at business, I'm good at money, finance, and driving relationships and networking and making sure I meet the right people and knock on the doors of members of parliament and say we need more money, or whatever it might be. Let the care people do what they're good at, and try and make sure there's a very, very clear boundary, professional boundary, between their role and my role. And if you don't cross that, it will make sure you don't get emotionally attached to all the things that you see on that video. As I say, I feel tearful every time I watch that video, which is why I don't do that role. However, it motivates me to keep going in my business role.
Guest 711 has asked, was it hard to have that work-life balance in finance?
Yes, in short, yeah. It was a big driver. I mentioned I did that SWOT analysis. One of the reasons why it's important to do that is you realize that you're just driven so hard. 60, 70 hours is a long time each week, just trying to get results. And we had the third highest performing team in the country when I left banking. So we were doing really well, but not without its costs. So yeah, it absolutely was hard to find a proper work-life balance. And it was a big consideration why I left banking. So when I did this SWOT analysis, the bottom, my wife, she had written on the bottom of this piece of paper, I put all the reasons why we shouldn't go. You lose your share options, you lose your company car, you lose your bank subsidized mortgage. You don't get any of that in the charity sector. But she wrote on the bottom of this piece of paper, wealth versus happiness, ? And that was the bit that kind of think, do you know what? Actually, I'll be much happier, much less wealthy, but much happier. And so that's proven to be. And I managed to get a beautiful daughter as well after the bargain.
Happiness is wealth, I suppose, at the end of the day.
Exactly, yeah.
I know we've just briefly touched on it, but the SWOT analysis, just for some people who might not know what that is, just explain what one of those is for us.
Sorry, what? SWOT, sorry. Yes, yeah. SWOT, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So it's like, imagine a grid with 4 quarters in it, and you put down all the strengths that you think you have, the weaknesses you think you have, the opportunities of, say, moving to a charity career, and the threats. So that's basically what a SWOT analysis is.
So it'd be useful for some people as well if you're thinking of moving into new careers or different types of jobs in career progression. They're definitely a very good idea for if you're someone like me who needs to visualize something and see some answers in front of you. That's what they're great for. We've got time for a couple more questions because I'm cautious. I don't want to keep you from David William. I don't want him telling me off. So what projects are you most looking forward to working on in the near future?
Brilliant. These are fantastic questions. Thank you. We have just launched our new strategy at the Children's Trust called Hope and Ambition. And this is about the hopes and the aspirations of the children that have brain injury, and our ambition to grow our services to do more for more children, actually. So our vision, our 10-year vision at the Children's Trust, is to support every single child that has an acquired brain injury. So bear in mind, I said there's 40,000 each year. We don't do that. We don't support them all today. So that's our plan. But of course, the next 5 years will be around that. Part of that is we are also planning a new build on the site at Tadworth. Watch this space. So that's very exciting. So as a single project, that is really driving, motivating, and keeping me absolutely focused, because the idea of having a building that will be kind of holistic, integrated offering for every single child that we support, and they all have education, health, care, and therapy needs is quite exciting.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely fantastic. Guest 350 has asked, what would you like to be remembered for from your time at the Children's Trust when, heaven forbid, you eventually retire Diane Graham has asked. What would you say?
I love the fact it's Diane Graham. So for anyone who's interested, Diane Graham is actually someone who knows about the Children's Trust. She's a parent of someone that we supported and is now one of our most amazing volunteers. I mentioned we had 1,400 volunteers. She's one of those. So obviously Diane wants me to stay there for a long time, so we like that. I mean, talking about drive and retirement, by the way, Joe, I already am planning to retire in 8 years' time, and I know that, and it's a lovely feeling. You know, when we talk about, you make, the luck in the life you wish to lead. Well, right now, it's a lovely feeling as a leader to say, do you know what? In 8 years' time, I'm going to retire. I'm getting married for the second time this year to Lisa, and we are planning already to retire in 8 years' time. It's a lovely feeling to actually have that level of focus. So in answer to Diane, I guess really it's just making sure that we continue to support the families, hopefully in the way that people like Diane see that we do, and of course this new build. I want to see this building happen. These are challenging times. Like all charities, we're struggling with fundraising. We've had to cancel our fundraising events because of the current lockdown. So we anticipate losing hundreds of thousands of pounds in the next few months. And that's why we've launched our special appeal. And it goes right full circle to thanking you at Springpod for supporting the Children's Trust with these talks. Really appreciate it.
And just to Diane as well, thank you so much for your question. And thank you for the work that you do for charity. Both of you, thank you so much for the work that you do. It's an absolutely fantastic cause. And some great questions from our viewers there as well. And some fantastic advice from you, Dalton, too. And as I said earlier, it's been an absolute honour having you here with us on Learn Lounge. Thank you so much for joining us. And as a reminder that we're raising money in aid of the Children's Trust, that very same one that Dalton heads up. As you've heard, they're doing so much to ensure that every child has a fighting chance to return to their normal lives. And I'm sorry, if that video hasn't made you want to donate, then honestly, I don't know what will. So every little really does count. So if you do want to donate, you can do so via the link on your screen now. That's thechildrenstrust.org.uk/donate. And like you mentioned earlier, Dalton, the minibus and the £40,000 from that, how much it helps the charity and the children as well. So just think that is where your money is going. So thank you very much to Dalton Leong as well. Don't forget to tune in to tomorrow's session where England cricketer Monty Panesar will be telling us about how his inspirational journey from playing with his friends to playing for the country. Trust me, you do not want to miss that one. I'll be here with him tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.